Thank you so much for coming. So a bit of housekeeping straight off the bat. Angel wants me to tell you guys that please don't touch any of the books, or else the whole place will just explode. And then also just no liquids, if that's okay. Just because once again, this is all very volatile, except for our esteemed guests over here. All right, awesome. So basically, the panel is so now you've graduated. Let's see what we can do to move things on. I think the format is going to be a very casual chat, basically. I'm going to kind of be like pitching questions to our guests, who I'll introduce in a second. And then afterwards we'll have a Q&A. So if you have any questions, just store them until the end, and then we'll have a little bit of a more free-form kind of chat at the end.
And there's a free gift for the best questions. So
yes, so whoever asks the best question gets one of these guys. So. Right, so now just to introduce our guests, I'm going to go this way. So over here we have Matthew Thompson, who is a fine art and commercial photographer. So he actually originally practiced as a graphic designer before he moved on to concentrate on photography. He completed his master's in fine art photography from Ulster University in 2014. Yes. And his work primarily concentrates on how our conditioning influences our perception. He's been exhibited across the world in Europe, Scandinavia, and China, and his clients include Philips, Monocle, Condé Nast, Time Warner, Cara, EMI, etc., 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 etc. Then over here is Kate Nolan. Kate is a visual artist focused on bringing her photographic skills to telling stories that examine the nature of identity. Her practice involves working collaboratively with communities over time and exploring kind of their circumstances in their lives through both images and text. Her main interest lies in kind of translating this material into the medium of the photo book. And her photo book, Neither, is very successful. It documents the lives of women living in Kaliningrad in Russia, and it won the Alliance Française Photography Award, as well as the Magnum Graduate Award, and was also nominated for the Photo Book Festival Castle's Best Photo Book of 2014. It was published as an artist book in September of 2014. And then at the end here, we have this guy, Ellius Grace. Ellius is a portrait and fashion photographer from Dublin, Ireland. He received a degree in graphic design from NCAD in 2015 and now works editorially and commercially between Dublin and London. He is also the co-founder of Junior Press, which is a publishing initiative and magazine working to showcase young talent in Irish photography. He has shot for ID, Dazed, Wonderland, ASOS, and many more. So thank you guys for coming.
Brilliantly presented.
Pretty impressive. I feel good about myself.
Yeah, high five everyone.
It helps to have
Life doesn't really feel like that, but that was good, yeah.
That was like the Instagram feed. Of
You left out all the pain and suffering.
Yeah.
Okay, so I kind of going to try and break this up into little blocks to make it more manageable. So the first thing that I really want to deal with is the idea of creative and kind of personal development as artists and photographers. And I'm going to kind of cut to the chase, and I'm going to basically establish that the first step to really do any of this is make work. Gotta take some photographs. So I would just like to ask some of the guests if they can talk about the importance of making and pursuing personal projects. So maybe Matthew, if you want to start, insofar as personal work, working on projects that you're self-directed, how does that pay off for you? Obviously outside, other than just you get to accomplish something nice. But then what are the kind of maybe the less tangible benefits of pursuing personal projects?
The thing is, doing a personal project that you never really know if it has a home or a purpose, and it's something that just is that you can't not do. I think that is generally the way I kind of see it. It's just that even if it lives in my kind of portfolio for a couple of years, that it's still valid, and I don't necessarily need an audience. And I just think that kind of beginning a kind of conversation, even if it's with yourself, kind of begins to live in your commercial practice. And to think that, I always just thought if it's true to me, it's true to someone else. And to find your voice, even if no one else is listening, you kind of, it's, the Bob Dylan thing is, I'll know my song well before I start singing. And so I think before because I was coming not from a photographic background, from the graphic design background, that I really wanted, I kind of want to keep it quiet for a couple of years before I told everybody what I was doing. And all I wanted to do was make money, just so I could pay the rent and just enjoy what I was doing, because I didn't enjoy sitting behind the Mac the whole time. And then so you begin to develop those projects, the things that kind of, and then you start feeding that into the commercial work. Then as the years pass, you can then release out that other work at a later stage. So it's absolutely fundamental to getting some sort of confidence going to meet people. And it is a jump into the unknown, and you don't know whether people are going to connect. But I think it's kind of good to keep that. Well, it was essential for confidence in the commercial world, and I don't actually I would hate to practice a commercial practice without having personal work. I think it would be incredibly difficult, because you would really analyze your work based on the feedback from your clients, and you would be very much swayed by their opinion. I think it's really good to know how you feel about that work as well. So that's why I think your personal work is, I don't know, instrumental, just so you kind of know what your own standards are. But that's what it is for me.
And then, so Kate, for yourself, your personal work
is
your work.
I only do personal work.
Exactly. So I kind of wanted to ask maybe how do you kind of go about making that personal work? Because that is what you do. It's not something that you.
The only thing I know how to do as well, though. I mean, there isn't like there's a alternative for me. I mean, if I could write or if I could paint, it's just my way to express how I see the world and a way for me to understand things as well. I mean, all of my projects are kind of based in me not understanding something and going, I need to just fucking understand this. So I'm going to go in there and I'm going to engage and and I never answer my questions either. I always go in with a question and I just come out with a million more questions, but that's great. And it makes you realize that there isn't, that it's not, the world isn't black and white, it's just mostly grey. But you need to look. And I love it. Like when I started photography in Griffith back in I don't know what year it was, 2005 or something like that. And I saw Jim Goldberg's Raised by Wolf. And I realized what you could do with photography. And since then, I've only worked on I was saying I'm going to do short projects. I'll just do this in 3 months and that's it. But it never happens. But I love it. But I'm broke all the time. I'm not broke all the time. So you win.
But I think there's a really interesting kind of chord there that, all of us as photographers, you have the skill that you kind of work away at and you build up the skill of photography. But really, the idea of making personal work actually goes beyond that. And it's about kind of asking yourself what you're interested in.
And who you are.
Exactly, and that can be and then you use your skill of photography to kind of try tease away at that, and whether you're asking super big questions, I want to figure out what I can say about income inequality, or if you want to go super specific and I want to photograph hot dogs, I don't know, but and that's how you start making that personal work. Myself and Ellius were having a conversation a few days ago over lunch about the whole idea of junior, and I think your dad was putting some heat on you for how junior sits alongside your, actually how you put bread on the table. So if you want to speak about how do you feel that now, because so Ellius is starting out, so I think you definitely feel this kind of pressure to hustle and to work it, but then we're also trying to make this thing. So
I definitely think all the personal work I've made in some way has kind of repaid me, and whether that's physically, a lot of the jobs I get these days, they reference something that I've done, and the majority of the time it's a personal work, whether it's a portrait project or it's an editorial I did just with a stylist for free. And that's been my income for the last few months, has been these jobs that are coming in and they're saying, we want you to do this, and that's something that I did for myself or for not for a client. So I think being able to show that and being able to show what you can do and put it out there, people really do respond to that. So actually, like, physically, I have been repaid, you know, in hopefully, well, not fully, but I mean, the personal work really does like come back, like it repays you personally, of course, because it keeps you interested, lets you like carve out your own place in the world, because no client's going to tell you to do what you want unless you can show them that you can, like, you know, do that properly. So I definitely think, I mean, junior is a little bit more of a stretch because it's kind of, you know, kind of moving into this new place of publishing and curation and everything like this. But I think to show that you have more strings to your bow than just taking portraits and doing the button thing is really, really important. I think people really respond to that. And like, I bring junior along to most of my interviews and meetings and anything. It's kind of like a second business card to show that you're this dedicated to the practice of photography that you will showcase and put spotlight on someone else. I think, like, monetarily, junior is quite a sinkhole at the moment.
Woo!
Yeah, but I definitely do see it like turning as well and shifting, and being able to see like starting out with nothing and like turning it around. I think to show somebody that can actually translate to this kind of idea that you are capable in a lot of ways.
That you can finish things. I think
Exactly.
that's the same with my practice. I would say that's the same with commercial work and your fine art as well.
I never finished my project.
Okay, commercial work.
It's just, I think the importance of a deadline. I'm very dependent on deadlines. So I think maybe that comes from the design background. That same with the commercial or a personal project, that I can let that just be a diaristic thing, and I let that kind of be analysed at a much later point in time. But without going in for competitions, I cannot recommend going for you need to go for all the competitions without that kind of sense of pressure and that kind of sense of competition, and knowing who's won before and who's gone there, and understanding how flexible or malleable the form is, that if you want to use found objects or found photography, basically without entering competitions. I know the world is, you shouldn't always see yourself in relationship to everybody else, but it's just to actually know sometimes when you do break through, you get so few compliments in photography. Normally, as long as you deliver it on time, they'll just, the best thing was that no feedback is good feedback kind of thing. Okay, they're not giving out about anything, and that's brilliant news. But when you get that little compliment, the breakthrough, the Kessel's Award, the Magnum Award, it's just an affirmation, a pat on the back that goes, okay, I got a nomination, I didn't win, or whatever that was, but I'm going forward in the right direction. And I really, really think we kind of need that. And even the response that you guys had with Junior the other night, and that's another affirmation of there's an audience. Yeah. It's not just for a night out, they really connect with the work we're doing. Yeah. And so I do think putting yourself out there, is as scary as that may be, I think I can't recommend it enough.
You can't not.
Yeah.
You might as well just go home then.
Yeah.
No, I'm serious though. Why are you making work if you're not going to put it out there? And a lot of people do.
Well, it's a Vivian Mayer thing as well. And you can...
Okay.
Yeah. But today in 2017, no one has an excuse not to have a website. It is the easiest thing to do in the world. And well, not in the world. No. There are easy ways to do it. And I just think we're looking for photographers for junior, we really had to dig for some people. And I think we probably missed some other people that we really would have loved just because they don't have a presence.
Yeah.
And maybe you're not too social, that's okay. You just put yourself online, and if your work is good enough and you keep showing it to people, I think it really travels. It takes on its own life and just goes places. I think it's great.
Please have websites, because it's really difficult otherwise for us.
We've had to go some really, really indirect routes to try and find people.
Yeah. So then actually I'm just going to kind of pick up briefly on what you kind of said about entering competitions, that sort of stuff, and I'm going to kind of tie that into with this whole idea of portfolios. Portfolios loosely is basically just a collection of your work, right? So I guess starting with the idea of competitions, I just wanted to ask you a question, Kate. When you're entering competitions, do you ever tailor, you have a project with, let's say, 50 images, you can only enter 20. Do you tailor those images to each specific competition?
Every competition. You have to tailor it to every competition. You have to adjust your synopsis, you have to adjust your CV, absolutely, to every single one. And you need to be very specific about what you enter. You need to know who the judges are, if it's actually worth it. A lot of the competitions, they're just trying to make money. So really, you know, do a bit of research before you start just giving your cash away. And see what the theme, you know, you see people entering things that their work has nothing to do with the actual theme of the festival or the magazine, or, I mean, just do your research beforehand, but be very specific. I change every single time, every single time.
And then Matt, yourself, so
Might waste a lot of time.
the idea of your portfolio, like
Yeah.
you've got a book that you show to clients, let's say, when you're putting that together, because I think, like, having just put my book out recently, this was something that I was really thinking about, is how, you know, you have your personal work that you shoot for one reason,
Yeah.
but you're showing it to people for a different reason. So
Yeah.
can you talk a little bit about that kind of sense of adaptability?
Okay, there's a few different things with this. Is that I don't think I have this right yet. I don't really, I haven't quite. I get work off the back, actually, largely off the recommendations of other clients. There's a job that's coming in from Asia tomorrow, and that's come from Rich Gilligan. So the recommendations and kind of your community and your friends and the people you went to college with, and these connections today, that they actually are as important as having a website or a portfolio, and your friends being able to talk to an editor over the telephone saying, okay, he's a steady pair of hands and his work's about this, and he's daylight portrait guy, that's what he is, and being able to synopsize. And if your friend can get you and they can sell you on, because there's so many gigs we do and we can't do ourselves, unfortunately you're tied up with something else, you got a bar mitzvah to go to, whatever, and you just, unfortunately, anyway, so a lot of work trickles down through the network. So what I think about personal work in your portfolio, and I got this wrong, I had an interview with Vanity Fair over in Paris, and I showed my master's project, and my master's project it's poetic, and it took me a long time to figure out what it was. It actually took me a while to understand what I was trying to unravel. By the time I did that interview, I wasn't very good at talking about it. But I'd done another project about a guy on death row, Herman Wallace, was showed down here, and I knew that story really clearly. And almost because it was a collaboration, I had to know it very, very clearly, because it was a collaboration. I can't recommend collaborating enough, but we had to fight it amongst the two of us. Kind of, what is this really about? Is it just us, hanging on the shirt tails of his misery? What are we really doing here? And so the value of having that personal project in there was to be very clear about talking to Vanity Fair about, this is how I feel about photography and feel about this particular project. So when it comes to a portrait that just might be a celebrity portrait or a portrait of an author, that they go, this guy really cares and thinks about not just the end product of the photograph, but who he's photographing, and are they going to have a horrible experience when he rocks up or not? I think so. Yes, I think the personal project prepares them for your ability to kind of articulate yourself about their work.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like, if you're shooting something for yourself, you don't have a creative director, you don't have an editor looking over your shoulder. You're just doing what you want to do, as well as you can do it, without any kind of creative restrictions. So that's actually a really good opportunity to then show it to someone and be like, well, this is what I can do, kind of unrestrained. This is me at my mostest. Yeah. And then
I'm gonna use that mostest.
And then they can see that, and that might be like a photograph of your mate, but then they can just almost substitute in someone else. Yeah. Oh, right, okay, well that just means you can take a good portrait.
Especially Ellius's work, I think that's initiated your personal projects, and I think it was very simple to translate that. Oh, absolutely, this is our demographic, this is our target audience, and there's an honesty and a rawness to this that you had because you knew the people.
Mostly.
So
helped.
But that kind of ease with which he brought to those photographs is exactly what I think Days were looking for.
It was kind of like training wheels in a way.
Yeah.
To then be able to apply this kind of familiarity over to people that I don't know. It was a good training practice.
Yeah. So moving over actually, to you're like a really good case study to see, like, okay, so you have this portfolio. Can you tell us a little bit about like that portfolio hustle, like how you know, have you showed it to people? What was their responses? Kind of like, what were the outcomes of that?
I definitely think having a physical book was really, really important. I remember before in Paris, like a year ago, I didn't have a book yet. I only made one at the end of 2016, and I didn't bring along like a file or anything. And I was there in a model agency's reception. I kicked their reception desk off their chair, and I was trying to like load my website, and their internet was terrible. And then the person I was meeting was just kind of there like, yeah, okay, we're gonna look at, and I was like, okay, one picture came up, and I was like, okay, great, okay, it's all loaded. I clicked to the next one, and it's like just like this, like super slow, and I was just like, no, I swear, like I'm really professional, but look, just wait for the internet, like it's not my fault. It's like you're in. Anyway. So from now on, I have
you
a book.
guys are unprofessional.
yeah. So like my book doesn't run out of battery. It doesn't disconnect from the internet. It has everything. But I'd say the way I put it together is, like obviously I have to put like my list of clients in there to show that I'm kind of, you know, you have to show that you're trusted, I guess. But I try and put everything that I'm most jazzed about at the front, and then at the back. In the middle I have stuff that I can show that I'm a bit more like, I can be not as personal with, you know, I can be a bit more malleable, but I try and like bookend the work with stuff that I'm like super excited about, because then, I think Matt, you told me the first time I met you like 5 years ago, I was going to London to intern, and I had a portfolio made up, and I asked you to, you were teaching the year below us, I think.
Okay.
And I asked you to look through my portfolio, and so we sat like in the hall, and you were just going through, and you stopped on this like still life jewellery. It was like literally just catalogue work.
Okay.
Fully white backdrop jewellery. It was like, and I just put it in because I wanted to show that I could do studio lighting and that I'd done this catalogue stuff. And you said, well, do you want to do jewellery still life? Like as work? And I said, well, not really. And you were just like, well, just take it out then. Like you should only put into your portfolio what the work you want to do. And you showed me something else. You're like, well, you've shown here that you know lighting. Why bother putting in this work? Because let's say somebody sees that and they go, oh, he's great at doing jewellery, and suddenly I'm getting all this work for jewellery, and I'm just so bored, and I'm just there like, it's become my career. So I definitely think like putting in the things that I want to do, even though it may not be the most commercially viable, is kind of important. And I think it's actually worked quite well. I seem to get jobs that I like, so so far.
So if I can just, so I'm going to bring all this kind of together. So kind of where we're at the moment in the discussion is, number one, take some fucking photographs, right? Find something that you're interested in, pursue that, build up a body of work, assemble it in a portfolio. You have a series of images. Great, we're doing so well. Now, so we're going forward now. You have your portfolio of images with work that you're really jazzed about. And what are you doing with that? So we've kind of briefly touched on entering competitions. I think portfolio reviews are like a really big thing, especially in the fine art side of things. Do you have experience with portfolio reviews?
Yeah, I'm unsure. I'm ambivalent about them. because you're paying to show people your work. Without your work, they can't have a gallery, they can't have a magazine, they can't. It's a weird thing to pay for them to look at your work, you know. I mean, do you go in like as a commercial photographer to Vanity Fair and pay them 50 quid so they'll look at your work?
No, but you are hoping to get a commission, and you are hoping. Yeah,
I think it's kind of like.
But no, I've done the art reviews as well, and I sometimes feel that the money being passed over feels like, oh, they have to be nice to me, or they feel like they have to be. And there's almost like, they feel like, okay, if I was being asked to do it, I can imagine, empathise, put myself, that they say something very honest and then they just tone it back. Because that you've paid for it. It's just like, yeah, well, it's not too sure. But generally, I think your composition's great. And you're like, no, if there wasn't money in there, I think there would be just like, I really think you need to look at that person's work, and there'd be no upbeat, unless, you know.
I don't think that's true. I don't think that's true. This is going to be great. I've never had that experience. I've always had people being very, very honest, and some people just going, I have no interest in your work, this is not my thing, so.
You really rubbed them up the wrong way.
But I did the portfolio reviews just recently for Photo Ireland, so it was this new kind of scheme, which I was unsure about, and so I had Kristen Monarchy, so she runs Photo Monitor, and she's amazing. I think she's doing something in Brixton as well. And then I had a curator from Scene 15 in London. I had Mark Proust. I'm not exactly sure what he is. He kind of has his...
Jack of all trades.
Yeah, he has his fingers...
Son of Marcel.
Huh?
Son of Marcel.
And then I had a guy from an agency here, an Irish agency. And then it was 2 of us showing work, and it was really good. It was really good, really interesting feedback. You're with another photographer as well, so it was quite relaxed, and you're getting so many different opinions. And the thing is they're also trying to impress each other. Which is great. They're trying to really look at your work. They're asking loads of questions, and they're really. I've been working on this project for 2 years, and I'm going to have an exhibition coming up in the Gallery of Photography in September. So I've had loads of support around the project for the last while, but I needed someone to come in that didn't know the work at all, and that's what they did, and asked me like hardcore questions. I ended up having to remove images from the project. I had to kind of rethink the way that I was going to word it. But I don't know. But paying for it is a strange thing. That's a strange thing within photography altogether. You know, you think
the
about
same as the competition thing is in that you have to pay to enter, but you really that kind of pressure. One, I value it more. I'm going to put more energy into it because I'm paying for it, and it actually, although the ethics are questionable, it does actually bring your work to a finer point, and you. Going in for that, before you walked in the door, you probably had a fairly good kind of description of the work. What you knew what you were going to say before you got up there, and I think without those, just for me, without those deadlines, I'm too easily distracted. I'm on to the next thing. But it's a funny thing, and you do feel okay. I've spent €120 to go and talk to 4 people, and. It's a funny conundrum.
The whole thing's a bit funny. I mean, you think about these books that are made here. Well, this is Thomas Roof and Paul Graham, with smaller names, and they pay these 10 grand, 15 grand, 20 grand for their name.
Yeah.
You know, so photographers spend a lot of money, and questionable.
I think there's a difference though, in like the meeting with the editor of the magazine.
Yeah.
I think you should never be paid for it because there is commerce attached to what you get out of this. So like if I pay, does that mean I get the job? I think it suits much more the fine art world where you're just looking for this paying. There's no competition as to what job you might be getting. I think it's a much different situation where you're going in to meet someone who's going to hire you.
Yeah. But
they'd be like, I'll just give you a tenner more and give me the job.
But if you think about Junior magazine, so a lot of photography magazines will have writers and they have photography. They pay the writers, they commission the writers, they don't pay the photographers. If there was photographs in their magazines, if all the photographers said no, they wouldn't have a photography magazine.
Yeah.
So just saying, sorry.
No.
Sorry.
Just in terms of like peer review, I think it's a different thing.
It is different in that the editors, no matter which magazine you go, they rarely give you. They may say go and look at another photographer, but it's only in the portfolio reviews that they actually say anything really kind of constructive. When you see just a professional review, it's really not. Well, why don't you try this? I do as much as it is.
And it's generally supporting a festival as well.
Yeah.
So.
Yes. No, absolutely.
That's why I say I'm ambivalent. It's great. I had such a good experience with this last one. It's great to know shit. Like life.
Oh, it's like life.
Great. So now you have this portfolio of work that you were super jazzed about. Now it just got shat on by people who paid money to shit on it, and now you're moving forward. So I think one of the things that I've kind of found out as I kind of started taking photography more seriously is that really the photography, on a kind of serious level is being generous, maybe 20% taking photographs and 80% sending emails. I'd really like to, because this was such a huge lesson for me, so I think it's probably like a valuable thing to discuss and to impart to everyone else here. The extreme importance of actually getting out there and hawking your wares over emails. I think I'm going to start with you, Elias, because I think you're in the position that like a lot of us are in. You have this work, and now you want to be paid to get more work. But also,
Yeah.
so this is like editorial and commercial stuff, but I think it also applies in a more fine art context as well if you're applying for residencies or, you know, you want to get featured in photography festivals or so on. So can you just maybe talk us through your routine?
Yeah.
How do you go about getting in touch, and
Yeah.
why you do it? What's the payoff there?
I just spend every morning sending emails and hopefully receiving a few back. Yeah, you're right. It's a lot of emailing, and like I'm happy it's emails and not letters, because I can imagine just the mess in my room. Like it already is a mess with like a few documents that I received. But yeah, email like definitely so much of a thing, and speaking yourself up, like talking yourself up a little bit to try and not trick someone, but to get to get in the door and improve yourself. Is important, and I have like a schedule, and if I've sent an email to someone and they haven't replied, I'll wait a week and I'll send it again. I'll just like politely say, oh hello, just emailed you last week, and then there's just emails all the time, and if I can call into a magazine and ask for who to specifically talk to about what I want to talk to, that's really important too, because then your email doesn't go through a switchboard and then to the next person, you can try and get to as close to the person as possible. So really, well, for me at the moment, it's just about like I've built up a certain amount. It's like it's getting there, you know, and having a few names on the portfolio really starts to kind of make things turn. But I still have to send about, some weeks I'll send like 20 a day. I mean, I'll try and tailor each one as well, and you know, make it kind of. I have a few different PDFs that I'll send out with specific types of work, to just try and introduce myself and get in the door and tell people that I exist, because I feel like I do a lot of social media. Like I try and keep up with that as much as possible, and I do enjoy that as well. But I think really to try and get in there, there's also that need to just like spam the shit out of people and just be like, send once a week, be polite, and try and get in the way of them. Like the first, it's only been a year and a half. It's been a year and a half since I started working with bigger magazines, and actually the first 2 commissions I got came in about 1 week by accident, and so I think there's definitely like a certain amount of like luck there, but you have to put yourself out there to be in the way of that luck.
Yeah, I think once again one of the lessons that I kind of learned, and like obviously we spend way too much time together, so I think there's like rubbing off the but I don't know to what extent people in the room are interested in, you know, doing the kind of editorial and kind of commercial hustle side of things, but. And I would imagine a certain amount of it translates to the fine art world as well, is actually getting out there it's not easy, but it is simple. Yeah. In the sense that you just, you sit down and you make a spreadsheet. And it's like the least sexy thing in the world, but you just make a spreadsheet and you say, like, so for example, if we go back to the work that you're jazzed about, the thing that you're interested in, let's say it's music. So you have all this like music, and you're friends with loads of musicians. So you've got like lovely portraits of your friend who's a DJ, or you know, your other friend who's a drummer in a band or whatever. And so you've got all this music photography, you want to be in a music magazine, so you email Pitchfork, you email The Fader, you email Vice, Huck, you know, all the magazines, and you send them your photograph of your mates, and then, you know, attach like, hi, I'm interested in, I don't know, funk music. Can I shoot a thing on funk music? I know these amazing funk bands. Here are some photos to get you started. And you send like 1,000 of those emails, you get one back. But you get the one back, and you might end up shooting the thing on funk music, and isn't that amazing? Because now you're shooting something that you're interested in. But that could also apply to shooting bakers or hot dogs, you know, whatever. And so, to move over onto the fine art side of things, can you talk to us about like how do you get your work out there?
Well, I mean, I can, because I was just thinking this is quite interesting to see how people started getting their work out there. When I studied in Newport, so I was in Wales for 4 years or 5 years, and I came back here and I set up Slide Luck Potcher, which I think in a way is quite similar to Junior. It's not a magazine, but it was during the Photo Ireland Festival, so it was organising slideshows of photographers' work with music, and so I would have to work with photographers, I would have to work with curators. I had to get 2 curators to choose what would be shown. So I straight away got, everyone knew who I was, I was showing my work as well. When the curators would come over from London, or they'd come up for Cork or whatever, I would have an engagement with them. And it was just kind of a way, and I think Junior's a way to do that as well.
100%.
Against, say, like, I can do this, I'm really into photography in all different spectrums, and I exist. And so then I did it for 2 years, so I had really good contacts with 4 curators as well. When I finished my degree, I didn't finish my final year project. And I did that on purpose because I had no idea what the fuck I was going to do after I graduated. But I had this body of work I hadn't finished. So I spent the next 2 years finishing the project and making a book. And with the book, I worked with a really kind of well-renowned designer, Dutch designer, that has worked with lots of really important photographers. So that was another way for me to kind of get in. I would say, this is my book called Neither, Kate Nolan, designed by Sib. And once I said that, people would go, okay, more interesting, more interesting. So I just, and working with him, we became very close, so he introduced me to people. And it was just all of these kind of connections and webs that were built. And then I just kept talking to people. Once the book came out, I promoted it, I self-published it, so I had to get those 250 copies out there in the world. I went to something like 9 photo festivals the year that it came out. I spoke to everyone, I showed everyone, and I was so proud of it as well, so it was quite easy to promote. And then from there, I've just continued. I've just kept up the connections. And it was quite hard at the beginning, like money-wise, kind of getting shows, all of that. But now it's all kind of come together because all of these people that I was speaking to and showing work, they see that I can complete something and that I continue working whether or not I get the funding. You know? It's like I just got, for the first time, I got the Visual Arts Bursary. And I've applied for that, I applied that for 5 years. And you have to. You have to keep applying every year. And then every year your CV gets better and better because you continue doing it even if you don't get the funding. You just figure out another way. Sell a kidney.
I've got no more.
Or a kid. I don't do either of those approaches. I don't email people with, very, very rarely. So what I do is I just ask to meet people. I think that the physical portfolio is more important for me. Or even, I think initially I didn't even have a physical portfolio. I just had a website and I would go to people and I would actually show, or PDF, I think I would show them online. But it was always about how you had the interest, your ability to describe what you'd been doing. And I thought, and also part of the thing, I largely work with graphic designers, I come from that world, and it was really to ask, I wanted to find out who I was going to work with. I wasn't carte blanche saying, I want to work with this guy because he's famous. I want to actually see what he's like, because I know what it's like to work with someone when you don't connect. And so even if someone isn't, well renowned, but if you have a real kind of an empathy or kind of a buzz going on with them, I think I'd absolutely prefer to work with that person. And that's just bringing the book, going to meet just designers in 1 mile or circumference of the house, and just saying there's so many graphic designers and they all need photography, they're all stuck using stock. And another thing is I've done quite a lot of international work. And that has all come from Dublin. And every single thing, even working for Phillips in LA, came from doing Dublin Theatre Festival. And that came from doing a Nixer for ICAD. ICAD is the design people. They need some photographs of a metal foundry. I took some shots up there, and I did that job for free. And it was it's the Design Association, so I'm okay for doing that. And then I got Dublin Theatre Festival from that, and then the head of that company went on to be the creative director of Philips in Hong Kong. And she said, so the thing is that instead of overlooking at your peers, your design peers and the people around you in Dublin saying, oh, they're not important, they're not in New York, they're not kicking ass, that everybody in Dublin has aspirations to move on. And if you work together, you collaborate together, your work goes further. And same as like when the stuff's online, people don't care. Something made in Ireland is kind of exotic to someone in Hong Kong. That's pretty cool. If I show them work from Hong Kong, in Hong Kong, that's so what? So that kind of I just really kept it small, going to meetings one-on-one and seeing if I liked the people and see if we connected. And if we connected, then generally it was kind of a mutual thing. And starting off, they rarely give you a big gig to start off. They won't give you a big gig to start off. So they start you off on €400, €200. Would you go and photograph that store? We're doing a new identity for it and we need some nice portraits. And they go, this guy knocked out a couple of decent portraits and his details were good. And that is like a 3-step process to getting the big one, and then that's international work. So I've really kept it to Dublin, and Dublin has brought me abroad. And I worked in Mongolia and I worked in Beijing, and they were basically for Irish clients who actually had brought international work to Dublin. So that's just, it's funny, there's different ways to going about
I totally agree. Actually, one of the last big jobs that I just did in London was because of an Irish designer who's moved over and started working in this great design studio, and we just happened to do a cheap job for an Irish festival here, and we had to knock out like 4 or 5 portraits in a day in an office, and so together we had to work on this like no budget. So when he moves up, then we bring each other. And every time anybody mentions design, I'm like, oh, him, yeah, he's great. Get him, like big budget, let's get him.
It's the old Irish mafia.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
We got to stick together.
That's a really nice. You're actually kind of doing my job for me, because the next kind of thing that I want to talk about is, and we've kind of touched on that mostly on a professional kind of level, but there's also like a social element to it. Which is kind of something that you kind of got at, which is this building a community, right? So you're a photographer, you have your work, etc., 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 etc. But it's more than just having your work. It's also about meeting other people. And to me, it was really important. To me, I think it's really important to everyone, is fostering this community that is not just you working away. It's like you have a friend you can show your work to, photography and otherwise. So I want to maybe like ask you guys about this whole idea of reaching out, and have you ever had a mentor? Have you ever kind of like put yourself out there, and have you ever had any kind of like meaningful experiences come from that?
One little thing was
you're my mentor.
No.
That's a lie.
I went to see Perry Ogden. I know about 10 years ago, and I had the world's worst portfolio. It was absolutely awful. Like 2 good pictures and 20 or 18 freaking awful ones in there. And I think maybe he may have known that or may have thought it. So he didn't even open my book. So he went into his stunning studio, and his work is just exquisite. And so we sat down, and we just talked about painting, and he just talked about painting and about painters that he liked. And he said that when you look at other photographers, and you always aim, you'll only fall short of what they've already achieved. And the thing is, if you begin to aim something that is not photography, whether it's sculpture, poetry, film, I don't know, wickerware, or whatever that is, that you'll actually bring yourself into a new area. And by kind of being more fascinated in painting, that would be the best way to become a better photographer. And that was kind of his advice to me, and he didn't look at my portfolio or anything, but then I actually kind of often get more from painting shows, or just actually, guilty admission, I'd go up, there's a Degas painting up in the Hugh Lane, and there's it's an older woman, I think a nanny of a woman combing the hair of a young girl on the beach, and it's a beautiful umbrella. The composition is very like kind of Japanese print, and he's been into Japanese print, and he was also using photography at the same time. Before a big gig, I always go and look at that painting, and that kind of comes from the meeting with Perry. Just kind of, okay, if you can get something that feels so natural, so timeless, and that the artist is not present in the picture. Anyway, so that was the seminal moment for me. So yes, go and meet other photographers. I think that's pretty important.
Yeah, like if I can offer like a super brief anecdote, I remember it was probably like 2 years ago now. I just graduated college, and I went to Trinity, so I had no like art background as such, and I was just really into photography. I wanted to kind of go further, but I kind of had no idea how to actually do that. What were the practical steps to go further? And I followed Shane Lynham, for on Instagram.
Okay.
And
Do you follow him?
yeah, I followed him to his house. But actually, so pretty close because so we follow each other on Instagram. It just so happened, and then he posted a photograph like around the corner from my house. And I was like, oh, this is bizarre. And then I was like, you know what, fuck it, like, I'm just going to send him an email. Because I really liked his work, and I thought, well, maybe he would just take a look at my work. It was kind of unmotivated by anything other than just like, fuck it, like, let's go. And sent him an email, met him for a coffee, and it's like, to this day, it was one of the things that really stood the most to me because it really kind of broke things down. And I think by the time that I met him, I also had like awful photographs, so that was good. But he just said, like, listen, like, don't be afraid to email people to get in touch. I think he said that he emailed Alex South, who's like, you know, the guy. And even Alex South had time to like write him a few lines of response. And some people don't, but like for the most part, people are willing to kind of give you feedback and to help other photographers. And then the other thing that he said was that he kind of plugged me into this whole thing of like the library project, like come down, like look at the books, and you know, you look at the books, you find the work that you like, you look at the photographers that make those, you send them an email, you know, and it's self-directed, but you very quickly can kind of like start forming some sort of network with those people.
I as the Magnum Graduate Award, I got a mentorship, so I went over to Birmingham and worked with Susan Messias in a women refuge for a week, which was really hardcore. But I always have, with my work, I always have this fear of around ethical issues and misrepresentation and all of this, and she's been making work in really difficult situations for a long, long time. So just to see how she worked and how she connected with people and how she dealt with these kind of ethical representation issues was amazing. It's amazing. She's really touchy-feely. That's a really good thing that I learned. I touch everyone now because it just really does calm people down, you know. And she smacked me on the bum as well. Susan Messiah smacked me on the ass.
Okay, so the first time you see me,
It's the first thing I do when I photograph someone.
that can get you in trouble.
Women can do that.
Yes.
Well, that's a lovely note to end our little discussion on, just because we're kind of coming up on time. So I think we have another 15 minutes-ish, so if people have some questions, please hurl them our way. And the best one gets one of these guys. So does anyone have any questions?
You must do.
Here.
Yes.
Yeah, for example, my background is, actually didn't study photography, I was just like having different mentors and stuff. I'm from Argentina, so like the actual university career and stuff like that in public school was only in like 2015 that it was established. And then I had to come here to get a work at Apple, so I always loved photography. Like I still have my mentor from over there, but I'm still not sure like where should I try to do stuff. Should I try to like go to Argentina or like try and get like those connections in Argentina, in my country where I'm from, or trying to get stuff that is like, for example, that has to do with Latin America and stuff like that? Or do I go here, like try and do stuff here in Ireland? Because I think it's kind of like more difficult. For example, this is like Junior is like a magazine for like Irish photographers and stuff like that. And so coming from another background, sometimes it's more difficult to get into a background that is not yours. I've been living here for 2 years. I really love the country. I would like to stay. But I'm not sure where
it's
to.
It's a different viewpoint. There's so many different views. You know, we could all, like me and Matthew, could go
Angel
and take.
is the guy who set this up, and he's from Madrid.
Yeah.
And he
Exactly.
is the heart of Irish photography. Absolutely, no question about it. Himself and Julia, of course, that are running the library project brilliantly. That if we don't have that other perspective, that Irish people, as much as we travel well, we're not good at celebrating ourselves at home, and we've taken someone from Spain to do that for us. And I think to have an Argentinian voice and somebody else looking at the Irish situation, or looking at the way we behave and our institutions and misbehave, that I think we need more voices like from. Absolutely, and don't go away. Stay here.
If it speaks to you, though, I think it doesn't matter what you're doing. Like, you know, I try and do as much personal work as possible, and you know, I had 2 projects that I was just in this first quarter of, I don't even know, but like before I left to move to London, and I'm still trying to have those go on, but I think I have to start something new because I don't live here anymore, so I really can't keep them as my main project, so I only be here every few months. So I have to try and find something new that I want to kind of focus on, and like have this like longer running kind of thread. So I don't think it matters if you are from here or not. I think it's really what really you want
it's just,
to say.
I think the thing is sometimes like you're like, what is this relevant for?
Yeah.
Sometimes you sort of like, what if I try applying? I'm like in the middle now because I've been here for like 2 years. So sometimes you got like some photography that you did in Argentina that perhaps it's like more relevant to the situation there. Perhaps it's also interesting for people in Ireland to see how the situation is in Argentina. And then sort of like you sort of like, what do I apply for and what do I not? As you're sort of like in the middle between the 2 countries.
But it can cross both ways, you know. You can be an outsider and an insider, you know, so it can cross over in Argentina and in Ireland, as long as it's really amazing work.
No pressure.
Amazing things.
Awesome. So then,
Can't really follow that, okay. But this is really kind of pales in comparison to that question. I shoot on film. I only really shoot on film, but I feel like I'm kind of getting the sense that I need to get a work on digital photography in a commercial sense, or in a sense that's more accessible to kind of commercial work or editorial work. I'm just kind of confused as to whether I should pursue a career in digital as well, you know what I mean, or just start shooting on digital and use film, or should I just use film? It's very, I don't know, it's very kind of...
I guess, it is tough. I think if you look at my book, it's like 90% of it is all the film work that I do, and every time I do a job, I'll see if they have a budget to do it on film. I mean, sometimes there's not actually. It shouldn't be on film because you need to do a lot. Like it just doesn't suit the format. But I think it's important these days to have both, but to know when you want to use either. I don't know. Like if you like Andrew Newting is a guy who's set himself out so strongly to be a film photographer. And he's really stuck by it, and I really respect that. Like, I didn't have the balls to be like, no, I'm not doing that because it's on digital. I think he does shoot digital sometimes, but really, like, his focus is on film photography, and now he's built up this, like, infrastructure where people will come to him and they know what he's about.
Isn't Laura Panic?
Panic,
Is that
yeah.
her name? She's
Yeah.
the same. She's pure film.
Yeah, but she's massive now. So.
Yeah.
She
I
can
know,
afford it.
but she wasn't always.
I would also
always.
just like to
Yeah,
have a quick
yeah.
caveat to that like film is it's a choice of like medium, I guess, for lack of a better word, but there's also a different question, which is aesthetic, right? I mean, you can shoot like large format 4x5, and that's like one thing, but you can also shoot a disposable film camera, and those are very different things. So if you're pitching to a magazine like, I don't know, fucking Kinfolk or something, and you're giving them these like super lo-fi images, that's not going to work. So you have to, whatever it is that you shoot, whether it's digital or like a pinhole camera or whatever, it has to suit the people that you're giving those images to. I think that's like a really big thing to consider. And then after that, it's just your own choice of is there a budget here? Does film suit what I'm shooting? I don't know, like I recently did a thing where there was like a super tiny budget, and rather than getting paid, I was like, I'd rather just take some pretty photographs.
I think
the problem, film is so expensive.
Yeah, if you want to make your living off photography, I think it is important to be able to switch, unless you want to spend a couple of years kind of slogging it. Because Andrew was shooting all the way through college, and he kind of really set himself out with a strong perspective. And sometimes I'll take a job and I'll sacrifice some of my pay just to be able to do it because I think it fits. But I don't think film always fits every job. I definitely don't think it's like the answer. It definitely isn't.
Like, you know what, like if you're hanging off the side of a mountain, like photographing some rock climber, like maybe bring a digital camera.
You're not going to be able to set up your tripod and your like black cloth, for your large format.
I think overall, like, it's one to identify what is the value of film. What is the aesthetic tonality? Where are the color values? What are the emphases? What is the color range? What is the color spectrum? And that, okay, take away the calling it film. Okay, say it has a reduced color spectrum, has a limited. So there's a stronger green emphasis, a stronger blue emphasis, and really analyze what's going on. That's one aspect of what film character brings to it. What are the qualities, aesthetic qualities? There's also the your emotional response to using a camera by not looking at the back of the screen. the importance of the frame, the amount of pressure you're under when you're taking that frame, that I only have 3 shots left and I need to nail it. And so I'm not going to take 17 shots. So there's that, and there's also that I think you accept, as we all know, we accept our mistakes more readily when we shoot on film, and we find values that are kind of have greater importance when it's on film. And I think that's what makes it film exciting, because we juxtapose kind of series of mistakes with perfection, and therefore perfection becomes more amplified. And this is what film gives. But if you kind of write down those points and you go, okay, that's what I think is happening with film, there's no reason you can't bring that to digital. And you go, okay, it's aesthetic values, and then it's important. And there's one little trick. There's a guy called John Spinks. He's represented by East Photographic. He's a phenomenal photographer. He's on the same agents that Linda Brownlee is under. That he says one thing is just, if you're shooting digital, shoot it on a tripod. And just, it slows you down like hell, and it's a pain in the ass, but it's the same slowness that you get when you're shooting film, or it's some sort of attempt to slow you down and make you think a little bit slower. And as a starting point, if you were beginning to go into digital, I would recommend shoot on tripod, and then maybe after a while you won't need it, but I normally don't need a tripod. I normally use one.
But you remember we talked to you before.
Yeah.
We made a podcast. We're still editing it. It's a slow process.
What?
But
Can't wait.
I think you'll have to.
But you said about using a tripod, and it's something that I kind of lack. I don't always use a tripod because I'm just like, oh, it's heavy. But anyway, you said that it saves your last thought, and you can then move away and have a look at the next thing, but you aren't taking your camera with you. The camera then, when you set your tripod, it has saved your last composition for you, and then you can come back. It's a kind
of layering of ideas, and that's a guy called Joel Sternfeld, and that's his take on it, is that it just remembers your last thought. So compositionally that's set up, and then you kind of you tweak it a little bit, and then you start looking at their eyes and how the subjects begin to connect with each other. You're not every time going back to look at the composition. There's a negative side of that, is that the work is still. People are still, and my work suffers because it's so still, and there's something.
I don't know if it suffers because of that. I like the stillness. I like the stillness.
But that's a value it has, a stillness. But I look at people who do, like Perry Ogden does moving work, and he uses this at Mamiya 7, I'm pretty sure, and he uses film, and it just feels like he's dancing with them. You just feel like you're one of the people there, and it feels like such a more human thing that he's achieved.
Like the Richard Avedon kind of like.
Oh God, it's just divine.
The model doing this, and he's like doing more. He's like even crazier, like going through the air.
But I don't know. I know what you don't do pulls on your heartstrings greater than what you do. So.
There's a difference between, like, if you're talking about portraiture, the engagement with the subject. That's those still photographs. It really feels like the photographer's there, and there's this kind of equality between the subject and the photographer. But then, of course, there's capturing the kind of like essence of a situation, and it's all amazing.
So I hope that didn't give you more questions.
Sorry, did we answer your question?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay.
Can I ask a question? What importance would you put on assisting other photographers? Do you have to do that for a few years, or have you all done that?
Have we? I have. I do still.
I do randomly.
Yeah,
every once in a while.
I definitely think.
Do it for friends.
Yeah, that's actually really do that. Definitely do that. Yeah, that's a good time.
I've done it for this guy before.
You learn loads, actually.
You
learn loads about how other people work. I think assisting is fantastic.
It is, yeah. The year that you were looking through my portfolio, that 2014, I went to London to intern. I went and interned at like Rankin. It's a big studio, and it was like the most intense month I've like ever had. But it was amazing to really like open my eyes, like suddenly, like to see the business, the relationship between, you know, how you have to navigate this like client photographer relationship, and then how the photographer deals with the subject and everything. I think it's so important to see how somebody else does it, so you're not going into the situation and being like, how would I do this? You just get to stand back in a way and kind of just look. And I think Rich Gilligan was the first person I ever assisted, and he had a massive effect on me. I did like 2 days with him before I went away, and I think for like a good half a year, my work was like just trying to be his work. But I think I've moved away from that now. But yeah, I'm trying to phase it out. I'm trying to like shift away from assisting. I looked into maybe working in a studio full time, and I think that's also important. I mean, it can be important, but I feel like I've come to a point where I'm trying to like turn and like do more shooting than assisting. So I feel like you can get stuck in it too.
I think it's a very good way to start there.
Absolutely,
to actually
yeah.
see how it works, you know?
Yeah, and I think once again there's this thing of like, kind of like when we talked about the digital film thing, it's like, where do you want to end up? So if you want to end up shooting fashion, then look at the entry-level positions, you know, work in a studio, try to assist a fashion photographer. If you want to do food, don't do that, go to a food photographer.
But I also assisted a still life photographer, and that was a great shift, and it was actually such, it's like assisting still life is super chilled out compared to fashion. But anyway, that's a whole other thing. But it was great to see another way where, I mean, I don't necessarily want to go there, but to be able to see all the different parts of you know, of the world is, to me, was super valuable. Yeah, really valuable.
Yeah. I think it's like, from what I understand, it is perhaps not necessary, but I would definitely advise it, because kind of like, why the hell not? Although like a follow-up question, if I may ask, to you guys, is working for free as a kind of tacked on bit.
No.
What are your...
No, never. No. I think it's ridiculous, it's unfair, it makes photography look like it's not important, but anyone can be a photographer. It can be like a token amount, it can be an exchange,
That's what I do.
But for nothing, no, fuck off.
That's good, yeah, no, absolutely. Fuck you, pay me. That's
like, I gotta buy my dinner, I gotta pay my rent.
I think it's important when you can work with peers for free. That's something that I really believe in, because we're all getting something. You know, I'll make sure that nobody's being done, and then you all come out with something, and I think that's great, because then because then also the work is better. Because if I'm doing a job and I know I'm not being paid much, I'm just like, this is so annoying. Like, I'll try and do it the best I can, but like there's something in me that just goes, I don't like this. This isn't good. You're winning. I'm losing.
You're taking advantage of the fact that so many people do have cameras, and there are so many photographers, and you can't allow them to take advantage, because it'll just continue and it'll spiral.
I'm sensing.
No, I do it, but I it's not a complete, like, it's not completely for free. It's a favor. That it'd be a swap. So you'd work with a graphic designer. I understand that they don't have whatever it is to get the portrait taken. I'd say, I wouldn't mind having a chat about the portfolio and the layout. Could you give me 2 hours? I'm going to give you my 2 hours. So I think swapping time is a really good way to go.
Yeah.
And the thing is that nobody respects your time as much as they respect their own time. And so if you measure up, I'm going to give this, whatever, this is going to be a 6 hour, can I get 6 hours of your time as well? And I think that's, it will never be 6 hours, but even say if it's a photo editor or whoever that is, again, I want to pick your brains for an hour and a half, and then they go, they'll understand the value of that. So I do it, and it has led to good gigs, but it's always, it sounds callous, but it's not, as long as I'm happy with the situation. I think one thing is that if you underprice yourself so much so that you begin to resent the work you're doing, you'll never do good work, and it kind of will short circuit your career. So if you're doing jobs for whatever 50, 60 quid, and really you're only really happy doing it for 300, 400 quid to do that job, because it's going to be 2 days work, and it's going to be a pain in the ass, and you have to set up a meeting before and after and say, like, I'm comfortable doing it for this. And then I think that it's just like a self-respect thing, and that will go on over time. But I have in the past done things underquoted for jobs, and it gets into a negative framework. And the knock-on effect was like bad work in my portfolio, bad feeling about it, and not wanting to be a photographer. So it really was a short-term thing.
Can I add to that and say that, like, generally a good client won't let you underquote. You know, if they've hired you for the job, you know, they'll try and pay you a decent rate. Anyone who's happy taking a lower rate for for a professional job, it's a fucking scumbag.
You
I just wanted to like that's like two fucking cents.
I think you can put in your quote and you say, does that sound right to you? And that's what the reason why I like to go and meet people rather than to email them. I know kind of you get a bit of a judgy character, and once they've met you and they're going, actually, I've had recently someone said, you could actually knock it up 10%, you know, and that 10% just means you can buy dinner out some night, or that it just takes a little bit of pressure off you.
And you put value on your own work.
Yeah.
You need to put value on your own work, because they already, well, not everyone, but people do devalue photography, devalue this work, so you need to be there and be confident about it.
That's one of the hardest things I've learned in the last year is setting out and turning things down where I say I literally can't. You know, I'd love to do this and it would probably be a nice job, but I just can't devalue myself that way unless I feel like they can do something for me that I can't do for myself.
Unless you're not devaluing yourself because you perceive value in what you do.
Ways.
But if I know that they have money and they're just not going to give it to me, I'm just going to tell them to go stick up their ass.
We have time for one more question, so if anyone wants to chip in. Anyone at all? No.
Free magazine going.
Yeah, that's
pretty good, right?
Well, I kind of have a question. You know, at the beginning of the conversation, you emphasized the fact that you really have to know yourself when you start working in photography. But then how you manage to actually putting your work out there when you don't really know yourself as a photographer?
Free magazine.
I'd share it with everybody.
So it's a question you don't answer.
Yeah, right.
So what any of you guys like?
Does anyone ever know themselves?
Give him the legacy.
No, I don't think you ever know yourself. It takes a long time. It takes a long time to mature and understand. I think you only know yourself at that moment in time. You never know yourself completely, and that's a gestation thing that comes over time. And who you were 10 years ago is a very different person who you are today, and who you were in 10 years' time. All that kind of thing. So I wouldn't let that hold you back. And just as long as it is true to you today, I think that's enough. That's cool. But not to wait for, I think my work is eventually going to turn into, to a Ridley Scott vibe. No, I don't. I think to pre-know where you're going to go, I think it would stop you, because I think, Picasso's whole thing is, if I knew what the painting was going to look like, I would never bother starting. So the thing is, you start your career not knowing where you're going to end up, and you start putting it out there, and each move is a response to the job that goes before, and it's really exciting to be experience that without having planned it. For me.
Yeah, to add like a little bit on that, in like a example kind of way, it's like what I was saying earlier, like let's say you're interested in music, right? And as a 22, 25-year-old, you're interested in this whole like funk thing, and you're photographing this band.
You're really into funk.
Yeah. I listen to
Are you trying
to maybe when you're 45, you're like, oh, I want to photograph like avant-garde jazz, and that's. And that's fine.
That's the natural progression. Funk to avant. But actually, when you think about it, so when you write, like, we have to write these artist statements, like who you are as an artist. And when you reflect back, so I guess I've been a photographer for, 12 years or something like that. So now when I write an artist statement and I reflect back, I see all of the connections between the work that I've made over the last 12 years. And you do change, but I think the essence of you is always the same, and the way you respond to things and what your interests are. And it might seem like they're up and down, but there really is always a thread that connects through, It might not be visually, it might change, but
I think it's like photography itself. You can prepare all you want, but you kind of have to meet reality in the middle. So like knowing your current self, or what you like or what you respond to, is, I think that's all it is. Like someone who's still finding my voice, but it's really nice. Like at the end of last year, I got to make this book and say, this is what I did, and now this is what I would do differently. I was interested in that. I'm still kind of interested in that, but now I'm kind of like move along. So yeah, I think knowing yourself as a whole is kind of just knowing what you're about at the minute.
I think a really good practice to get into is asking the question. You know, looking at your work and thinking like, why am I interested in this, or why was I interested in this, and what am I interested in now? Like consciously asking yourself the question, and then figuring that out and making work about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I think you just did that.
Right, well, let's all say a massive thank you to our guests, because they did a baller job. So,